This weekend was really rough in the crypto space. We saw $2.15 billion in crypto assets that were liquidated in just a 24-hour period of time. To put that into context, it's worse than Luna. It's also worse than FTX. And very simply, we're asking a basic question right now that we've used before to help us figure out which projects are stronger in poor market conditions, which ones have a better chance of bouncing back faster. And the question itself is pretty straightforward. How long ago was the project last at this current price? And was it showing strength at that time, or was it reflecting weakness? Based on this very simple question, we have 4 tokens right now, 4 altcoins that, at least as the evidence would suggest, will bounce back faster. In fact, a couple of them have already shown some pretty positive recovery. Welcome to the channel. My name is Maddie and this is Altcoin Buzz. I'm a little bit under the weather, as you could probably tell, so my apologies if I sound a little bit different. But all the rest is the same. I wish you all the best of luck, of course, if you choose to invest. Just remember that, as always, I'm not a financial or investment advisor, and that means by extension, this video is not official financial or investment advice. First of all, and to kick off our list, believe it or not, Bitcoin is actually one of the fastest to bounce back from generally any kind of a big liquidation, including the one that we saw this last weekend. As I'm recording here on Monday morning, BTC is already back to being down only 3% in the last 24 hours. So there is a bit of a recovery that we were already witnessing. But even if that weren't the case, even if it weren't making progress and climbing back up, eventually it would. If we zoom out further and consider the bear market that we had, the top for BTC was, let's round it to $67,000 in November 2021. Really just as the bear market was starting. And then in terms of a low during that period of time, Bitcoin hit its low of $15,814 about a year later in November 2022. And then we saw very clearly after that bottom that the bounce started. It's not something that occurred quickly. In fact, it took almost 18 months, but then fast forward to March of 2024, BTC reclaimed that previous high of 67,000. Of course, some patience was required, but the point is that it did retake that previous all-time high. Now, BTC was last at today's price, so just below $96,000. Less than 3 months ago in mid-November. We're looking here at the 3-month chart. And as far as consistency, Bitcoin is pretty good at that. It's the safest coin to hold in the industry right now. The more expensive it gets, the safer it actually is. And that's because it's less likely that something damaging happens to take the project down to zero. Next up here, we have SUI, which is another great performer that we expect to bounce back relatively quickly. This weekend, SUI dropped from $4.25 to $2.73, or a delta there from highest to lowest during that time of 35%. So pretty significant. SUI actually has already bounced back at least a little bit. It's sitting now, as I record, at $3.14, or up about 15% off of those weekend lows. Now, again, our criteria here is very simple as to when the project was last at this price. In the case of SUI, it was $2.73, so that recent low, back in the first week of November, or about 3 months ago. Now, a little bit of perspective here. I would argue that losing 3 months of gains, despite the fact that it's not fun, but losing 3 months of gains actually sounds and feels a lot less tragic than a $2 billion liquidation. And that's actually the point, because an active or semi-active trader that has a trade go against them and sees that after 3 months they're kind of at the break-even point, that is disappointing, but it's not heartbreaking. It's not devastating. The simple fact is that SUI has historically shown and is continuing to show a really top-notch bounce-back ability. Next up on this list, we have BNB, a great project that honestly we haven't talked a lot about recently. Now, although we're just looking at charts here, BNB's aggressive token burn program is helping to prop up its price in general and is also kind of a support pillar of the project during a difficult time like this in terms of market conditions. That's because this burn program takes effect every quarter. It's programmed in like clockwork. And it's going to help the charts. BNB is down over 16% this weekend. It went from $687 to $577. But it's already bounced back off that weekend low of $540-ish by approximately 8%. So it's 8% off of its weekend low. but it's still looking pretty good as a project if we zoom out. And BNB was last at the current price, $577. Actually, like Sui, during the time of November, first week of November to be specific. BNB has kind of been a silent crusher, actually, because even after this weekend's blowout, BNB remains up 91% in the last year. So on the short term, I get it. It's a nasty drop. That's granted, and I'm not going to argue. But when in doubt, zoom out. BNB, like a lot of other projects, have had a terrific year. And we're really just shaving off profits in a relative sense from the macro perspective. A bet on BNB is very much a bet on Binance as a platform, as an exchange, as an ecosystem to stay in its leadership position among crypto exchanges. I would argue that that's a good bet personally. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but that is what BNB represents to a lot of people. And if you've seen how they work in terms of emerging markets, you know it's going to take a lot to unseat them really as the centralized exchange leader in those particular markets. Last but not least for today, we're looking at Solana, ticker SOL. Now, for context here, the Solana at $8 post FTX debacle is the stuff of legend in cryptocurrency. If you weren't around, or maybe if you just don't remember, for context, Solana, the SOL token, went below $10 in December of 2022. That was a long time ago, however. It feels like a different world because since that time, this project has reinvented itself. It's risen from its own ashes like a phoenix, and it's shown a lot of resilience. In terms of more recent price history, SOL has been on a very impressive run of 101% in the last 12 months. Even with this particular shakeout this weekend, that still counts, that figure of 101% over the last year. And then just recently, SOL has also performed incredibly well. Its all-time high, for example, was just 15 days ago. That was $293. The low this weekend that we saw for SOL was $186.51. So that delta there represents a 24% drop in just over 2 weeks. It's not great. As I record right now, the price of SOL sits at just under $198. The last time SOL was at this price was just 3 weeks ago. SOL really did go on a very impressive, really amazing run in mid-January. It went from $199 to that all-time high of $293, adding nearly 50% in value to itself as a project. So those 3 weeks of gains have been wiped out, unfortunately. Does it feel good? No. But it's not the end of the world. 3 weeks is not that long ago, and SOL, as really a representative of a lot of other quality crypto projects in this space, is strong. It's resilient. That's an understatement, if anything. It will be back.